5 on this list is Malthusianism. Malthusianism is an idea created by Thomas Robert Malthus that looks at the human population growth and its relationship to food consumption. The premise of the theory is reasonably simple. Basically, population growth will grow exponentially, but the production of food can only ever be linear. If the population grows exponentially and food production is linear, then there will eventually be a point reached where not everyone on the planet can get food. This is called the Malthusian catastrophe and the doomsday scenario that we're going to be looking at. Malthus writes about this extensively in his essay on the principle of population. Ever since he wrote about this theory, people have debated its validity for centuries, with scientists being on both sides of the argument. It's even led some extremists to rally for population control, basically meaning that we thin the herd so we never reach this world-ending scenario. There are some counter-arguments to Malthusianism, with the biggest one being human innovation. When Malthus lived, he never had the means of growing food like we have today, and our innovation continues to grow as time goes on. That being said, around 9 million people die from hunger every year, so I wouldn't be surprised if this catastrophe started to materialize in 2022. Now, I should note that it wouldn't be an immediate thing where all of a sudden everyone is hungry. It would take years to see the full-scale effects of the population shaving itself off due to hunger. However, we've talked extensively about climate change on this channel before and the scary effects that it's currently having on the planet, and food is one of them. Climate change isn't making it any easier to grow food. In fact, the rising temperatures are making it far harder in some places. In the areas where it's already so hot to begin with, it's become increasingly more difficult to grow crops due to the lack of water. This is made to be an even bigger problem as well, because typically the places that are already hotter to begin with are the areas of the world that suffer from famine the most. All of this being said, our ability to grow food due to climate change is becoming harder. Our growth in population, though, isn't slowing down at all. If you take a look at any global population chart, then you will see that our growth is exactly as Malthus suggested: exponential. It's very possible that 2022 is the year that we see the scales tip, and due to all these factors, enter into the Malthusian catastrophe. Number 4 on this list is an asteroid. The idea of an asteroid smashing into the Earth has been something explored in the media and pop culture pretty much ever since we realized that's what killed the dinosaurs. Now, I shouldn't state that as fact because it isn't 100% confirmed, but that is most scientists' working theory right now. They believe that a celestial object crashed into the Earth, and that caused the climate on our planet to change so dramatically that the dinosaur species couldn't survive any longer. David Morrison of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Ames Research Center talks about the impacts of an asteroid hitting Earth further, where he says, "The effects of an impact on the Earth depends critically on the size and hence the energy of the impact. For example, a comet less than 100 meters across will explode high in the atmosphere and probably do no harm whatsoever. If the comet is 10 kilometers across or larger," and then in brackets he says, "that is if the impact carries an energy of more than 100 million megatrons," and bracket, "the resulting global environmental damage will be so extensive that it will lead to a mass extinction in which most life forms will die. The environmental consequences of a giant impact take many forms. The worst effects come from a global firestorm ignited by backfalling impact debris and from global pall of darkness that lasts for many months due to the dust suspended in the stratosphere." So obviously an asteroid coming to Earth, if it was a large enough size, would be horrible and likely mean the end of all human life as we know it. As of right now, though, we look to be in the clear because there hasn't been any reports from scientists detailing an asteroid that's on trajectory to Earth, but some people have conspiracy theories surrounding that. It's been speculated upon that even if scientists saw an asteroid was on its way to Earth, that this wouldn't be released to the public. Similar to how people think the government has covered up the existence of aliens, they also believe that a world-ending scenario like this would be swept under the rug as well. This is because mass chaos would ensue if we all knew that we were going to die. I tend to put my faith in science when it comes to stuff like this, but crazy things in the universe happen all the time, and an asteroid hitting us might just be one of them. Number 3 on this list is a solar shutdown. Back in the 1970s, the study of the galaxy and space was at the forefront of everyone's minds. We were learning a lot about our universe and how the laws of physics operate in space. We were also learning a lot about our sun, the most important thing to us in our living solar system. During this time, though, we made an unsettling discovery about it, something that, if proven true, would end all life as we know it. This is called a solar shutdown. A solar shutdown is when a star, like our sun, doesn't operate at its full power, but its activity level drops. This activity level could drop as much as 40% compared to what it's doing now. The reason that they theorized this is because the sun wasn't emitting as many neutrinos, a particle associated with solar activity. As more research came out, paleontologists have found evidence that this happened roughly 650 million years ago in a period that they refer to as the snowball Earth. They call it snowball Earth because Earth was basically one big ball of ice. If the sun was to lose 40% of its power, then the oceans would all freeze over and all life on Earth would cease to exist. The problem is, there's no way we would ever be able to stop this or do anything about it. We also wouldn't know that it's happening until it's actually transpiring right in front of us, because there's no way to predict it. The sun means literally everything to us, and a dip in its activity by just a little bit would mean our slow demise. We just gotta hope that 2022 isn't the year that it decides to slow down. Number 2 on this list is a massive cyber attack. Ever since the introduction of nuclear weapons, humans have always had those at the forefront of our minds when it comes to massive world-ending scenarios. However, we need to start shifting our thinking a little bit. A cyber attack could be just as deadly, if not more so, than a nuclear war, and it's honestly far more likely in my opinion. Since the beginning of the internet and online activity, the capability of someone being able to remotely hack into someone else's computer and steal information, that's all been possible. It's also possible to remotely hack into someone's computer and control things on said computer. This has happened many times in the past and on some extremely high profile companies too. For instance, in 1999, Jonathan James hacked into NASA and the US Defense Department. He was able to install a backdoor into the computers, which then gave him access to tons of classified information like passwords to military computers. The craziest part about all of this was that Jonathan was 15 years old when he did this. It's really not a reassuring thought when a 15-year-old is capable of hacking into NASA and the US Defense Department. If a terror group was to do something like this, then the power they could possess could be endless. They could remotely launch nuclear weapons at will. They could shut down power to everyone on the planet who might be on life support. They could honestly do almost anything they wanted and launch the world into a complete disaster. This is one of the ones on this list that I fear the most of all. We just have to hope that the firewalls of these high-profile companies are stronger than they were in 1999. Number 1 on this list is the equation. This entry is really interesting and something that's widely debated in the scientific community. Richard Gott III was an astrophysicist and is one of the founders of the equation that ultimately predicts when the human race will end. He first got enthralled about the idea of creating a math equation to predict the future when he did that very thing in terms of the Berlin Wall. He predicted that the Berlin Wall would fall within 2.5 and 24 years. He was correct, and it did in fact go down within that time frame. He then took the equation that he did that with, and along with some other physicists, attempted to apply the same equation to the existence of humans. The time frame isn't as long as we may hope though. In fact, this math equation gives even odds that the human race will no longer exist from right now until 760 years from now. So that means that next year is very much in the time frame that we could all die out. Now the way that this equation works, you don't actually know how the human race is going to end, just the time frame that it's going to happen. This is part of the reason why some other scientists have refuted this theory, because they believe that the equation can't possibly be correct if you have an unknown variable causing the actual extinction. As far as we're concerned, we kind of just need to hope that they're right and God was wrong, because even if next year isn't the one where it all comes crashing down, 760 years still isn't that much time left on the clock. Number 5 on this list is better than human robots. Humans are far from perfect. I think we can all agree on that. But up to this point, there hasn't been a single other species as intelligent or capable as humans have been. That's why we have effectively taken over the whole planet and have become the dominant species. We may not stay dominant for much longer if robots can become better than us though. Best Life says, a more immediate concern that will only be exacerbated in the decades to come is the phasing out of jobs and entire industries as artificial intelligence makes them obsolete. If we do not act promptly in anticipation of job disruption, we could experience a social catastrophe on a scale not seen since the Great Depression, predict Rohit Talwar, Steve Wells, and Alexandra Whittington, leaders of Fast Future, a professional foresight firm. Governments could be caught out by the pace and scale of automation through robotics and AI to such an extent that a sudden surge in unemployment leaves significant numbers of people without work and without the funds to provide for their families. They predict that such a situation would lead to all sorts of collateral issues such as increasing social unrest, tension related to the income inequality, a rise in criminal behavior in order to meet basic needs, and potentially violent backlash against government leaders and authorities. Robots don't need to come in with futuristic weapons and kill us all to do some serious damage to humanity. Just by letting us further develop them and then implement them instead of human workers, that's gonna do enough damage. I've read extensively on this topic before, and it is literally already happening right now. People are losing their jobs left, right, and center because robots are just simply cheaper and more efficient. Sooner rather than later, there are gonna be too many people unemployed by this, and the whole thing is gonna come crashing down. We've just gotta hope that by that time, the robots aren't smart enough to take over either. Number 4 on this list is rigged elections. Now this is something that's been going on for time, but don't expect it to leave us anytime soon. Best Life says, as technology has made voting easier in some parts of the world, it's also made voting systems more vulnerable to attack, and these threats are only likely to grow, as we've seen in the efforts from Russians in the United States to most recent elections. Hacking an election in terms of changing actual votes is extremely risky for a nation state to do against the US, as it could lead to war, but for hacktivists and some organized crime groups, the risk may be worth it, says Jason Glassberg, co-founder of Casabas Security, a hacking firm that does extensive research and testing for the Internet of Things. At a minimum, expect to see ransomware and other cyber extortion targeting voting systems in the coming years. However, more dramatic attacks such as permanently crippling voting machines or forcing the machines to retabulate votes are also realistic. So it seems that rigged elections are only evolving and becoming trickier to detect, not leaving us behind like some would hope. We have this perception that our system is set in place and it's totally fair and democratic, but this just goes to show how off that perception is. So many factors that we don't know about go into an election, and our tiny little vote might not play that big of a role if some voting machine is casting millions for one candidate. It's all very slimy and sadly the reality of the world. Number 3 on this list is Hijacked Cities. So we don't live in Gotham and there's no evil Joker character coming to take over our town, so how would somebody hijack an entire city? Well, Best Life says, the dark side of our technological advancements is that we are also more vulnerable to attack. Glassberg points out to the recent ransomware attack on Atlanta that froze the city's systems, which eventually cost it $2.6 million for emergency response. We can expect to see more attacks like this in the coming years, particularly as city and county governments run a number of critical services which are often insecure and increasingly connected to the internet, says Glassberg. Since it's proven difficult to stop and prosecute these attacks, especially when they use simple tactics like ransomware, this is a very realistic scenario in the coming years as more criminal groups will hijack public services in order to demand large ransoms. Having all our cities run through tech has made our cities very advanced, but it's also made them very exploitable. The Atlanta example proves that some guy with a supercomputer across the world could completely bring the city to its knees. The government has even included this idea in warfare and has full-on task forces designed to target tech and things of this nature. Expect a lot more attacks like this moving forward as our tech continues to develop. Number 2 on this list is Digital Big Brother. I am a big fan of the show Big Brother, one of my favorite reality TV shows actually. Would I love to participate on that show? Absolutely I would. Do I want to be monitored every second of my life though? Absolutely not. Best Life says, as AI becomes increasingly sophisticated, we will inevitably start to see applications in the security domain developed without further programming by humans, according to the Fast Future team. Whilst not quite to the level of Skynet at the heart of the Terminator movie franchise, the machines promise to be far more sophisticated in their approach than humans and to develop more complex algorithms they predict. Consequently, such developments will severely challenge our ability to understand, monitor, intervene, intervene, make changes, and exert control over our digital security bots. They expect that the surveillance and control these bots will have over our lives could increasingly infringe on our freedoms, giving a sense that robot overlords are watching us. I already feel like a robot overlord is watching me. Like anytime I say something that rhymes with Alexa and then my Alexa robot turns on, I realize that I'm being listened to all the time. Or when I mention one thing in passing to a friend, like, I don't know, I say that I really want to go golfing sometime soon, and then the next thing that I see on my Instagram account is ads for golfing. This Big Brother mentality is already happening right now, and it really isn't nice. Apparently, this is only going to become more and more invasive as time goes on. We won't be able to go to the bathroom anymore without some robot knowing about it and storing that information somewhere. And finally, number 1 on this list is extinct species. This one is truly very sad, and it's something that has been going on for decades. Global warming is a disaster. It is a man-caused disaster that is slowly eating the world, and it's gaining speed. The ice caps are melting at unprecedented rates, and before we know it, they will be completely destroyed. Not only will that destroy the habitats of tons of creatures that live by the ice, but it will also destroy the habitats of creatures in the ocean and destroy our cities because the ocean level will rise enough to flood them. The next 50 years is absolutely critical when it comes to climate change, and many experts think that we've already passed the place of no return. It's currently estimated that 1 million species will go extinct by 2050, and there literally isn't anything that we can do about it at this point. Reversing the effects of climate change takes time, and what we do now, we will see those results in 50 years. That number of 1 million species will only continue to rise and rise if change isn't actively enforced. And honestly guys, we might be part of that 1 million species. Number 5 on this list is an alien attack. Baba Vanga believes that in 2022 we will make our first confirmed public communication with aliens, and that it won't go as well as we hope. She says that we will interact with these intelligent beings and that they will send ships to Earth and bomb our cities and take humans as their captives. Now in April 2022, the Defense Department of the United States released videos of what was called an unidentified aerial phenomena. If you've ever seen the video, then you know that the object was not flying in any way that our technology currently can. It was moving around almost like a dragonfly could, moving seamlessly through the air at extremely fast speeds. Many people have speculated that this was the work of aliens, and as of right now we don't have any human explanation for it. It should also be noted that we are always sending out communication waves into space to see if we get anything back. Would I be surprised if 2022 was the year that we got something back? Well, yeah, no, I probably would, but I can also see the reality of it happening as well. I also want to point out that our definition of alien kind of implies that something from a different world will come and take over, and that's also what Baba Vanga has insinuated. However, what about AI? Artificial intelligence is a completely different way of thinking than we have, and therefore alien to our human brains. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air either, but some experts have started to refer to artificial intelligence as another alien being as it gets smarter and smarter. I could totally see a reality where AI gets smart enough and begins some type of attack on the human race. This wouldn't really fit into the whole narrative of Baba Vanga though, because she did state that humans would be taken as captives, but she's also been very vague with some of her predictions before. I think that this prediction is slightly less likely than some of the other ones we're going to talk about, but I can by no means rule it out and have to acknowledge the fact that it might happen. Number 4 on this list is severe famine. Baba Vanga believes that in 2022 severe famine will ravage the world and lead to extreme conflicts that rack up the death toll. Now I want to point out that famine is nothing new, and there are a lot of countries that are suffering from this right now. Nigeria, South Sudan, Somalia, these are just a few. These are all countries where a large part of the population doesn't have regular access to food, and hunger is a daily struggle for these people. And that's just to name a few. However, Baba Vanga's prediction takes it a step further, and she believes that this famine will impact a greater portion of the world. She believes that this will happen due to climate change related issues. Climate change has been known to cause problems for the development and upkeep of food before. This manifests itself in a variety of different ways. One is the drastic increase of storms. Climate change causes heavy and dangerous storms to appear more frequently, and this will obviously harm any crops that are growing and damage that land where those crops were intended to grow. Higher CO2 levels, and this is something that I actually didn't know, but they reduce the nutritional value of crops that we're growing. So even if you grow them and you have high CO2 levels, then you're not going to get nearly as much nutrients as you would have gotten if there was less CO2. I don't want to touch on this one too much because we're going to talk about it in a later entry, but water and the lack of water will make it near impossible to grow any crops. Climate-related famine is certainly a possibility and something that I honestly think will happen. I'm not sure if we're going to see it to the scale that Baba Vanga predicts, but I definitely believe that the places that are already struggling, such as the ones that I mentioned earlier, will sadly continue to do so, and probably get worse. Number 3 on this list is the further development of virtual reality. Now, I need to clarify this because obviously virtual reality will continue to develop. We've already seen major advancements in the last 5 years. Baba Vanga thinks that this is going to take a major leap in 2022 though. She dives straight into a Black Mirror episode and predicts that virtual reality is going to get so advanced that humans will get lost in the world and become trapped in it. Now, if this is going to happen, then a lot of things will need to change in terms of VR from right now. From my understanding of virtual reality, you throw something on your face, and even though you look and you feel as if you're in another place, you're still very aware of your real physical world, and if you ever wanted to, you could just take the virtual reality thing off your face and then you're back to regular reality. So the way that they have it set up right now, I don't see any chance of you getting lost in another world because you could just leave whenever you felt like it. However, if we were to develop virtual reality to a point where you become unconscious, then I could see how this could work. I think that it would have to be something like in the movie Inception, where you pass out and then you enter this dreamlike state. If there was any way to upload your consciousness to a virtual reality world, then we could definitely get lost in it. For right now, I don't think this is going to happen in 2022, but I think that this is 100% something that could take place in the future. If you've ever watched or played any virtual reality stuff, then you'll notice that the graphics, I mean, they're certainly not the ones that we're used to when you're playing Xbox or PlayStation or something. Who knows, maybe the government has some virtual reality technology that is way more advanced than anything available to the public that I don't know about, and that gets released in 2022, and Baba Vanga's prediction does happen. I do feel though, like this one might take a few decades still. Number 2 on this list is the appearance of a very dangerous virus from a glacier. Now, this is something that I'm going to be talking about in another video as well, but it's simply just too good and too realistic to not bring it up in this one. Baba Vanga believes that due to climate change, glaciers will melt, and in those glaciers, a virus will be released that will ravage the planet. This is so scary, not only because COVID has just happened and is still happening, so diseases are pretty triggering to me, but because there is so much truth to this. I'm sure that we've all heard that glaciers are melting and the sea levels are rising due to climate change. This is already really damaging and bad for the environment, but these glaciers do carry viruses in them as well. Scientists who examine such things have taken samples from glaciers that are thousands of years old. In these samples, they have found traces of viruses and bacteria that have managed to survive in the ice during all of this time. The things that they have found are also unlike anything that we've ever seen before in other viruses. This is a big problem and something that we need to take note of. If we've never seen these viruses before, then our immune systems have no idea how to handle them. It's like a completely foreign language to our body that has no idea what it is or what it can do. Because of this, it could totally rip through the human race if the outbreak was big enough and it was a contagious virus. Learning a new language takes time, and our immune systems might not have that kind of time to adjust to these new diseases. It should also be noted that these viruses might not just affect humans, but maybe it affects animals or plants. Those things wouldn't have the defenses to deal with this either and might not be able to sustain themselves. This could collapse the whole ecosystem, which in turn could collapse the whole human race. Basically, this is something that needs to be dealt with ASAP because the damage it could cause could be irreversible. Number 1 on this list is a lack of drinking water. Baba Vanga has predicted that in 2022, the world will suffer from a lack of clean water, and that water will in turn become a very expensive and highly sought after resource. This prediction from Baba Vanga is honestly
Not that far-fetched at all, and I believe could have a lot of truth to it. The global population is rising every single day, and at the time of making this video, there is 7.75 billion people on the planet. That's almost a billion more than what we had in 2010, and this dramatic increase of the population will just continue to rise and rise. Every additional person that is born and living on this planet needs to have clean drinking water to survive, and as of right now, we are not replenishing that clean water as fast as we're using it up. Mexico City, one of the bigger cities in the world, is located on top of an ancient freshwater basin. This is not being refilled though, and as the city uses its water, it's beginning to sink. In fact, the city as a whole is sinking roughly 9 inches per year, which really starts to add up after a while if you think about it. California is going through something similar and has suffered a very serious drought over the last few years. Even after they got hit with some extremely heavy rainfall to counteract this, it still didn't do enough to refill what they had lost. We also have to factor in that fresh water isn't just used for our drinking, but also for the food that we eat. All of the vegetation that we grow requires fresh water to thrive. The animals that we breed, they need to drink water too. Basically, water is one of our most precious resources, and we are surely running out of it. A lack of drinking water would not only hurt our vegetation and us, but the amount of wars that it would incite and conflicts that it would cause, it would be massive. I can't say for certain that 2022 will be the year that it all comes crashing down, but Baba Vanga believes that it certainly could be.